Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Perceptive Podcast here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. We have one more live developer interview lined up for this week, but we got plenty more coming up. So, as always, if you are a designer working on an upcoming game and would like to come on and talk about it, please reach out. But my guest tonight, he is working on the game Rogue Command, which is going to be combining RTS, roguelikes, and deck building into one very different combination, and he is on to discuss it. So, please welcome from Studio Fennec, Mario. How are you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me, Josh. I'm doing very fine. It cooled down a bit here. The weather was terrible the last couple of days. I was barely able to think, and it's basically perfect that we're doing this now. Because yesterday I don't think I would have been able to do that. I would have just been dripping sweat.
I would keep this fan on above me at all times, or I will just melt for all my design talks.
Yeah.
But it is great to have you on, and again, thank you for reaching out about interests, and I think this will be another great one, as my voice is already starting to die from allergies and heat, so we'll see
Nice.
how long it lasts.
Well, I tend to talk a lot, so I can give you some breaks there.
There we go, nice. So, for people tuning in live, or if you're watching this recording, if you have any questions for Mario about Rogue Command, feel free to leave them in the comments. So,
Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely read them all, even in the YouTube video later, and I'm always happy to answer any questions that pop up anywhere.
all right. So since this is your first time on, I always like to ask new guests, could you talk a little bit about who you are and what your background is when it comes to game dev?
Of course. So I'm Mario. I'm turning 40 soon, and I basically don't have any real background that has anything to do with game dev at all. So but I've been working in a mobile games company for the last 10 years, but I was only very peripherally actually. That was one project where I was actually kind of involved in actually designing the game, and I did some levels and some riddles there. But other than that, it's just been basically my passion for a very, very long time. And I read all the books that I could get my hands on about game design. I listened to all the podcasts that were out there, and I basically try to absorb all that knowledge, basically for no actual reason. So then I picked up Unity a couple of times over the years and never really got anywhere because I'm very, very bad at picking up programming. And then at this point, 3.5 years ago, basically Martin and I decided to start a new company. Martin was one of the owners of the company that I worked on before. He sold his part of the company, and we set out to do something. We didn't really know what at that point. It wasn't really clear. Indie games was definitely one of the ideas that we had, but it wasn't really that clear. And then we started prototyping some stuff in Unreal and Unity to get a bit of feel for the tech. And then I had this really awesome idea for a virtual reality synthesizer that I definitely still want to build someday. And I was working on that for, 2 weeks or something. And then Martin, at that time, Command & Conquer Remastered was just announced. And I put Martin on to Slay the Spire, which he then very, very heavily got into. And one day he came to me and said, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool to combine Command & Conquer and Slay the Spire in a way?" And I was like, no, it wouldn't be. We should do a virtual reality synthesizer. And I didn't really understand how that should work the first couple of times he mentioned it. But he was very adamant about it, and I'm very glad he was, because the deeper we get into the project, the more sense it makes, and it's really cool to see how it takes on this shape that then informs where the next step should go to, and how to make it a bit tighter of a package. And it's been definitely the most fun professionally. It's been a very, very whiplashy kind of 2 to 3 years, the last 2 years, because of COVID and family stuff here. And on that was the one side, and on the other side, my music career kind of took off for the first time. And then also I made that game. I'm working on that game, which is just the most fun that I've ever had working on anything. So yeah. Yeah, and what I did before is I studied politics and sociology, so that's my that's my formal background, which is very. Although actually, I studied systems theory and sociology, and I think that might be one of the coolest tools to learn how to think about stuff that you can ever encounter. I can highly recommend that to anybody to look into, because I think that has helped me to get into all kinds of stuff, because it's a very generalized approach to stuff. I told you I would be rambly.
But yeah, it's always interesting when I talk to developers like how their path goes into game dev, because I've heard all manner of stories. I've talked to people who are investment bankers, who are lawyers, and you just never know when you get that itch to do game dev.
I really wonder if that is going to change in a couple of years, because I think, like when I was in university, I don't think there was a single game adjacent course in the whole of Germany, and I think now there's like almost every university has something in that direction. So I think there's a lot more formalized education that actually helps people go that way. So maybe there will be more actual professional game designers in a couple of years or decades.
All right. So just to clarify for people watching us live record, then, what is the elevator pitch for Rogue Command?
So the simplest way to say it's Command and Conquer meets Slay the Spire, just like the origin story that I just told. It's very much it's a single player RTS. It's a classical RTS in the way that you control it. It very much plays like Starcraft or Command and Conquer, but then the whole structure around that is very much that of a modern roguelike deck builder, like Slay the Spire or Monster Train. Monster Train is very influential, Slay the Spire as well. And so it's a run-based game. So you start with only a very tiny selection of cards, and then you work your way through a couple of levels. And after every level, you get into kind of a rewards matrix where you can decide what you will pick up next, like upgrades or hacks or new cards. And basically, your task is to, one, play the RTS game well, and second, try to build a cool deck over the course of your run. And there is already, like in the demo that we have out now, I think there's a lot of variety in that already. That's a big difference to the one that you played, because there was like a set progression that you went through in the one that we put out in February. But now you can actually choose a bunch of different cards and a bunch of different upgrades, so you can go explore pretty different builds already. And we have a ton of more content planned and some really cool ideas about how to basically put the game in a spot where every time you play, you will be able to have a very different experience if you want to, or you can try to go for the same builds. But I definitely want to have a bunch of viable builds in there, and basically all of them should feel like they are super broken and overpowered. That's kind of, I wanted to feel like, I don't know. And I also, sorry, I'll let Justin ask. I was gonna go on to AI because it's all connected in the way that it works.
Mm-hmm. And we'll definitely be talking about that for sure. Yeah. I guess my first question then is, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, you were talking about being inspired by Slay the Spire. What kind of attracted you to doing like an RTS deck builder as kind of like your studio's like first big project?
Well, basically, everyone that ever talks about how to get into games tells you that you should do a very small scoped, quickly developed project as your first one. So we heard that and did the exact opposite and made one of the most notoriously hard to develop genres out there with only 2 people. I think it's really just the way that Martin pitched the idea to me, right? if you understand why it's cool, then it feels very unique. Like there is nothing like I used to play a lot of skirmish matches, StarCraft and Command Conquer in the past, and I really liked that single player RTS experience a lot. And I was never a big fan of campaigns. Actually, I know that a lot of people love the RTS campaigns. That was never really my thing because I find the pacing kind of weird sometimes. But I also wasn't that huge into multiplayer because I get massive ladder anxiety when I try to play StarCraft 2. When that came out, it was very like it was a lot of fun and I played it for a long time. But I definitely noticed that it made me very nervous. Like I didn't really enjoy it that much. So yeah, basically. I think what we are offering is like a really new and unique take on how you can play a single player RTS game. That's basically the whole pitch, and I think that we're on a really great track with that already. I think some people have played the demo for dozens of hours already and are still coming back to it. So, and I myself still enjoy playing it after all that time working on it. So I think that might be not a terrible sign.
So just to clarify for people watching then, the entire game is built around single player. There is no multiplayer component?
Absolutely, yeah. Like I mentioned before, we are only 2 people, and I saw huge teams take on multiplayer RTS games and crash completely because it's very, very difficult. I would love to do it, but the game would have to way overshoot our expectations for it to make that a viable option, basically. I think co-op could be really cool because like a co-op roguelike experience could be a lot of fun, I think, where you can maybe like to find synergies between the decks or something like that. But basically the whole... there we go. Yeah, that's... So he's on our Discord. He's the one he got 50 hours. He also has the speedrunning record for the demo right now. Yeah, he's been great. He's been very, very helpful for us. Yeah, because he just mentioned in chat that he has around 50 hours in the demo for people who can't see that. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I think the it's really, really cool because every time you play the game, you have that added excitement of finding new stuff. And of course, in the full game, there will also be you'll be able to unlock new cards over like in Satisfyer, like Monster Train. So when you keep playing, there will be a lot of new stuff to discover. And also, we will have several factions. We're not 100% certain how that's going to work yet. I probably what I think will be the solution is that you will combine 2 of them. So right now in the demo, there's only Robos, but we already have a bunch of units from the other factions, and there's where just the factions aren't completely technologically done yet. So we haven't really added them yet to the playable versions. But yeah, you will have tanks, you will have mechs, you will have like trucks and jeeps and that kind of stuff. Probably no air because that will be really weird in the deck builder because it could be such a hard counter to other stuff. But maybe we'll find a way to make it work because I really love building little spaceships and airplanes.
So with the kind of like balance of the game, as you said, like it's going to combine the deck building side with the RTS side. So I of course play the demo, but to clarify for people watching, in terms of the actual cards or units that you're going to get, are all the cards going to be unit based? Will there be production cards, defense cards, that kind of thing?
Yeah, okay. So I think that is one of the things that we really have to get better at communicating, probably, because it basically is very simple. A card just means you get a new building. It's basically, we call them blueprints in the beginning, which I think might actually be the better naming convention because it's a bit closer to what they actually do. So every card lets you construct a new building, and most of them are factories for units. But there's also upgrade buildings. Like, for example, you can get a building that each instance of that building you build gives all your units more HP, for example. So, and then you can give that card an upgrade that allows you to build one more of those buildings. Like if you want to try to make your very smushy robos a bit more tanky, and that way you can like weight different things. Or there's some buildings that really enhance the effects of when stuff is catching fire. Like it might be like a fire can spread in our game, so that might be it might be easier for other stuff to catch on fire, so fire can spread more quickly. And then there might be other upgrades that might heal a unit when it's burning and stuff like that. So over the course of the run, you will have different ways to basically enhance that direction that you're trying to push your deck in. And there's very, very many different ways to do that. Already with the units that we have, it's the set that we have in the demo now, I think feels pretty tight. Like there's a lot of they're very interlinked. And a lot of the other stuff that we have is a bit more scattershot, and we need to find a way to basically make them a bit more tighter packages, so the systems work together a bit more. But yeah, I think it's a lot of work, but so far, like for the last 2 years, I think basically nothing major has changed in our ideas around the game. It's just been more like it just gets more fleshed out, like in the frame stays the same. So I think that's a very good sign that we're on the right track there, because we are not like chasing new ideas all the time. Oh, we should maybe do this very different thing or this very different thing. It's just, oh, we could do that also in this frame here, and that feels very nice, because it doesn't feel like feature creep, even though there is of course tons of new ideas popping up. It's all we're very confined into that design space that we established already.
So, as you're saying, in terms of the builds, how do builds generally work in Rogue Command? Because I mean, we can talk about stuff like obviously with Slay the Spire, with having the Ironclad, Silence, so on, with having unique cards. So, how does that fit in when we're talking about an RTS game?
So basically, the units have very distinct characteristics, right? So they're and the active skills of some of the units and the passive skills of some of the units play a very significant role. They're for example, we have a status effect that's called Bounty, which basically makes the affected unit take more damage, and if it dies, it drops a little crystal pickup that gives you a bit some resources. So, but that is just something. It's just nice to have, because doing more damage is always nice. But then there's other stuff where you can really push the build into that direction. There's other units that do a bunch of bonus damage against targets with Bounty, and then there is we have a mechanic that's a bit similar to the creep in StarCraft 2, where you build those towers that basically make your units move a lot faster. And then you can give those an upgrade that basically gives a chance every second when an enemy is near them that they'll just get the bounty effect. And then there's a building later on that you might get, which is pretty rare, but you might get that just every time something has bounty, it gets some damage each second. And so that way, you can just stack these things, and there's other things that something else might happen if a unit has bounty, and that is just the bounty direction. And then that might also be connected to some of the other mechanics again, so that you usually are able to combine a bit of those things, a bit like in Slay the Spire Monster Train, where you usually have like a main direction of your deck, and then you have those little added boni from different other cards or other things that kind of enhance the deck that you're trying to build. And yeah, basically that's it. And then the hacks that I mentioned, they are very, very basically the same thing as the relics in Slay the Spire. So they're like these global modifiers that are very big influence on a direction that you could push your deck into. And then you can also upgrade your cards 2 times, like in Monster Train. And that might also push your unit in a very different direction. Like it might make them drop a healing orb when they die, or I don't know, whatever the direction is that you try to push it.
All right. And Pun wants to know, will you get to shoot giant lasers in the game?
Definitely. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of giant lasers. Giant lasers, giant artillery tanks, giant rockets, lots of big explosions.
So, keeping with the RTS side, is there any kind of, I guess, unit bounce? The ever classic rock, paper, scissors of how units can fight each other, or is everything kept more generalized?
So it is right now a lot more generalized, because just in terms of balance, if you build a deck, it could be very weird if there's certain things that are basically a hard counter to that deck. And I definitely want to do that in some ways. Like it's totally fine if there's some types of enemies that are a lot harder with a certain deck, because that's also how it works inside Aspire. But I don't know, it feels like it's a bit more implicit, basically, if that makes sense. Because, for example, if you have a melee build, where you have tons of units that try to get very close to the enemy, and then you encounter an enemy that is in the demo that basically has a unit that is very similar to the Banelings in StarCraft that just runs into them and it explodes. That's, of course, kind of tough to deal with when you only have melee units, because otherwise you could try to pull them and kite them. So there's these kind of things where it's a bit more implicit. It's not that explicit, hey, this does bonus damage against tanks. We have experimented with this. There's still some leftovers of that in the game at some spaces, and I'm not sure. It might play a role in the different factions later on. There might be certain elements, or it might also be something that we push for the Ascension system. If you beat the game, then you will be able to unlock harder difficulties. And then that might also be something where that makes sense, where you maybe push that harder. So you have to be more aware of which direction you want to build your deck in, or you have to maybe try to, in some cases, be a bit more generalized with your deck, so you can, you don't run into any super hard counters. But yeah, generally, like my goal is that I want the player to be able to feel clever with the deck stable, right? That's because I think it's very satisfying when you figure out a cool combination of like, oh, if I get this upgrade and this hack and this card, and then use that skill, then this crazy synergy kicks off. And I definitely, that is kind of what we're going for. And it's in that term, it's a bit different to, I think, a classical RTS. Like it's not the way that you learn the units by heart in StarCraft, and you know that if this guy builds that unit, then you have to counter with that unit. That's very different. And also because the way that the decks work is in the beginning you only have a couple of cards, so you're not that flexible in the first couple of rounds of a run, because so that would also be kind of weird if you would hit enemies that are very hard counter to something that you have. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't, like I said, we tested out some stuff like that before, and it just didn't feel like it was the right choice for that game.
And does Rogue Command have any kind of versions of like the Slay the Spire's artifacts, where you can pick up an item or a power up that can change a certain aspect, enhance, or even just break the rules in some respect?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I mentioned before with the hacks. That's what they do. Okay. Is they are like these global modifiers that can push stuff a bit into crazier directions. Like, for example, there's one that basically gives you a 20% chance that one of your units dies. It will come back as a robo zombie, which played a big part in the first demo that we published. There's tons of things, and there will also be hacks that change a bit of the metagame. So maybe you might be able to get more coins, so you can buy more stuff in the shop, or you might be, I don't know, able to skip a certain enemy one time or something. There's tons of stuff that we can do, and we the great thing is that we've built all the systems in the game in a way that allows us to iterate fairly quickly. So I always like to just try everything out and see if it works, and if it makes the game feel better, then we keep it in and try to figure out a way how it fits into the whole picture.
Let's see. Pony has some questions. What's the macro micro like? We'll start with that, and we'll work our way down. See building structures or units, and what are the win conditions?
So the micro is very, very typical classical RTS gameplay, or classic RTS gameplay. It's you select your units, you send them somewhere, you move them somewhere, you hold position if you want. You can shift queue, you can queue up orders in factories, and you have all to manage all that manually. We have like a main character, but it's not like a hero unit in Warcraft. It's very weak. It's just the only thing that can construct buildings. And it's also our life system, basically. If you lose the engineer, then you lose the run. So you have to be very careful with them. So basically that's the micro side. The macro side, we only have one resource because that allows us to do, like, again, it's this generalization allows to connect it to a bunch of different things. If there's only these crystals, then you can do a bunch of stuff with, that also gives you crystals under these conditions, or that also costs you crystals under these conditions. And I think another big difference is that there is no tech tree within a level, right? There's never this condition, you have to build this thing before you can build this thing. The only condition is, do you have the money to build that? And you haven't overshot your building cap basically for a certain thing. So I think that's also a difference in the economy there. So I think that also kind of covered base management. We have harvesters. There will also be very different harvesters for the different factions. In the robo faction that's in the demo right now, it's just like cute little robots. Just when you build them, they automatically start walking, and people have already discovered, which I'm not sure if I actually really like, that they're really stupid. They just blindly go to the next crystal field. They magically know where those are. So that might sometimes means that they just start running around and just try to go through the enemy base to the next field. And I think we'll probably change that because it can lead to some very frustrating situations. But I also find kind of a funny thing that sometimes happens when you're doing something and suddenly you see like a trail of like 5 harvesters walking around the map. So what are they doing? And then you basically have to collect that resource, and that allows you to construct everything in the game. You construct buildings that way, you construct units that way. Buildings just drop in from orbit, and they usually come with 1 unit built right off the gate. Silver actually managed to beat the game with only the harvesters, which is insane, and I don't think possible now anymore, since we fixed infinite money glitch that might have been in the game.
In terms of winning the map, I know from the demo that the basic win condition was just destroy the enemy space.
Yes.
Any other win conditions you're planning, or anything else in the game now?
Definitely. In the game now, it's still that. It's basically you have to destroy all the enemy factories. But again, we want to experiment with a ton of stuff there. I think we will definitely try out survival kind of missions where you have to survive a certain amount of waves that get stronger and stronger. We have I have a gigantic list of ideas for different things that I want to try out, and we just have to see how hard they are to implement. But I think it's definitely something that that could also be a big strength, right? Because I think it adds to the variety of the game, and it also hooks nicely into that deck building aspect. Because if you know, I'm going to encounter these types of enemies, if I push my build into that direction, if I know that there's an enemy that will rush me in waves, and maybe taking more turret cards will be a good move there, or that way. Or if you're know that you're about to encounter a map that has environmental hazards, and you might push into a more heal focused direction, that kind of stuff. Because the maps they are also kind of a factor. That isn't pushed that hard yet in the demo, but there is a lot of stuff that we want to try out to make the terrain that you're on play more of a role actually in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's all, they all adhere, everything adheres to the same rules. All the trees adhere to the same rules as your units, adheres to the same rules as the buildings, and that is also why I'm not too ashamed to call it a roguelike, because that is, I think, a very, very big part of what are apart from the permadeath and that kind of stuff. I think that is also kind of what makes it feel roguelike, is this systems-driven approach there.
And to clarify, are the maps procedurally generated as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they are. It's I think they already work pretty well, but we definitely we want to iterate over that at least one more time to get a bit more control over certain aspects, because sometimes there's some weird situations where it's maybe there's the map is like a giant you just have to walk around the outside to get to the enemy base, or should all work. I don't think I have encountered the map that actually doesn't work in a very, very, very long time. But yes, some of them aren't that fun. So.
And that was Moon Chat wants to know: are there any like quips and voice lines when you like click on units in Rogue Command?
So not yet. I'm definitely aware that that's a tradition. I'm also all the voice lines, all the sounds I design myself. So I have everything I need right here to make that happen. And I'm definitely, I'm very aware of that tradition, and I think it's almost certain that there will be probably a bunch of hidden stuff like that in the game. I'm not actually sure if we'll put it on the units themselves. I know that this is an expectation, but we'll have to see, because I don't actually want them to talk that much, because I find that really annoying. But yeah, we'll have to see.
And I know one thing you were talking about earlier, I think this would be a good time, is the enemy AI, or how the enemy's going to fight you. And besides talking about the AI, I do have one other question about that. In a lot of roguelike style games, especially in the RPG style, we see, elite versions, special versions, of course, boss class fights.
Yeah.
Is that like translated all into Rogue Command, or is typically, the enemy faction will have like similar tools and abilities that you have?
No, the enemies are they don't adhere to the same rules as you do. Although they do all, like, they have an actual economy that you can disrupt. It's a bit bare bones right now. It's just basically like little oil drilling towers that you can destroy that give them money over time. But that will also be one of the differences between the factions, for example, the enemy factions, for example. There will be some that basically will try to take over the whole map with their harvesters. So you have to keep them at bay, and so that you can actually get your resources in. There might be some that don't even need a base, like giant monsters or something. I definitely, like I said, I want to try out a bunch of stuff in that regard. We have some variations for the bosses already in the game. Like, they usually have like some special buildings that do something. Like in the demo right now, it's not that great. I actually want to change it, but they have like a turret boost tower that basically makes the turrets of the enemy a lot more stronger and heals them really quickly. So yeah, you definitely you will have to pay attention to what the enemy has, and that is actually I think one of the things an idea that I really like that I want to try out is you have your deck overview where you can see your own cards at any time, and then the game just pauses. And I want that to have a tab for the enemy deck as well, so that you can see, the enemy has these cards, because it's very it's very important to get a feeling for that, because sometimes they might have certain systems that you need to be aware of, because otherwise you might try something that just doesn't work against that enemy. And I think also that's a cool way to encourage people to scout, right? Because I think that is a cool thing that we can do with these mechanics, is we can basically try to teach people how to play an RTS by incentivizing certain behaviors and giving rewards. Like, there could be a hack that if you've cleared up, I don't know, like 90% of the map, then you increase your income or something, or you get like some bonus effects of some sort. And that way I really like to be able to hook into all these kinds of systems and make them again then play with the deck aspect of the game.
Mm-hmm. And like, as you're describing this, it really reminds me of one of my favorites, and that was Command & Conquer Generals, when they added in the whole general system, where you had kind of, in a way, like almost like a prototype of a deck builder, or the faction side, where each general was its own unique faction. You had the air general, land general, stuff like that. And we kind of saw that get translated into Age of Empires 3 with their home city concept. But I know a lot of people, if we had RTS fans in the chat right now, so many of them just hated Age of Empires 3 with that kind of deck building. And with kind of like the design for Rogue Command, with like your own set of cards, or designing them, I guess. And I do want to get back to the AI as well. We'll talk about that next. But what kind of, I guess, philosophy, or kind of like the design or the balancing you're aiming for with the cards, or like how cards translate to the units, or vice versa?
So I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that.
I guess,
Sorry.
like, how are you approaching unit design in a game like Rogue Command when it's not about you having access to everything, but you're, again, like, you're building your faction out of all, like, the cards that you're getting match by match?
So basically, I think a thing that we need to do, and that is something that we figured out over time, is I think all the units need to be very specific, right? They need to do very specific things, and things that I don't know if you're familiar. There was a lot of discussion in the past about the design approach from Dota 2, where it was basically this idea that you make everything as broken as you can and try to keep that in this weird balance where everything kind of is crackling at the edges. That's a bit similar to how I see our game. I want to make every unit kind of feel like, oh, if that sounds broken, I want to try that. That sounds really cool. And then make them all. One of the most important things, of course, is like they need to have really interesting synergies, right? Because then the deck building aspect feels cool. If you get some units that I don't know, I tend to give very simple examples, but I think that might be kind of better to understand the basics of it. Is, for example, we have one unit that is very, very squishy. It only has like 5 HP. So if you get that building that I mentioned before that adds more HP to the units, that gives plus 5 HP per instance of that building, then you can basically quadruple the health of that unit. So that allows you to, like, if you have that unit, then you see this building for the first time, then you say, whoa, that's crazy, and then it's a lot of fun to explore what you can do with that. Can I push a build where I try to mainly build these little guys here because they're really cheap, and then maybe you get an upgrade where you can build them even faster, or something happens when they die. We have a hack that gives you a quarter of the money back whenever a unit dies, so that kind of encourages you to play even more aggressively and throw away units even faster. I think that is kind of an example, right? It's everything has to kind of fit together in that way where you always look forward to the next thing. I think that is a really important thing of that deck building aspect. I want you to be. I'm really, really happy every time I watch a stream or a playtest or something, and somebody is at the card selection screen. And they're like, "Oh, this sounds really cool. Oh, this also sounds really cool. Oh no, this sounds really cool." And then I was okay. I did my job there. That's what I want. Like, I want that choice to feel difficult, not because they're all lame, which also sometimes happens, but luckily a lot of the time it's also because people realize, oh, that would fit really well into my build, or which is also kind of cool and which is different, I think, to the card deck builders. Oh, that kind of fills in a gap that I have, right? Yeah. If I have this very aggressive build, then maybe getting a turret that can stabilize me in the beginning is a good fit. That even though I don't want to maybe I'm not going to use the turret for a lot other stuff, that kind of enhances my tactic in that way. And I think it's really fun because you can mold the game very much to a play style that is fun for you. So I think that's.
Yeah. And you can also get that one card that's just like, it just completely has nothing to do with my deck, but it's just so damn cool. I want to have it in there just as like that random X factor for my strategy.
Yeah, or you note it down basically because you're just like, oh, I want to, next time I'm going to take these kinds of cards because I now know that this card exists, and that changes my perspective on these other cards, which maybe before I thought weren't that cool. But then I see, oh, there's this upgrade and this other card, and then suddenly it makes sense, and you realize, oh, that opens up a whole nother kind of path that I could go.
Mm-hmm. And do you have, I guess, rarity as like a factor for the cards in Rogue Command, or is everything just like a solid, one kind of set?
Yeah, we have a rarity. The main function of that is basically is that we can. It's also strength, of course, a bit, but it's actually more like this. How to express that? The later cards that you get, I want to have crazier effects within your deck, right? They should be like the ultra, like with 3 rarities and the last rarity. They should be the ones that basically complete your deck, where when you've built in a certain way, and then you also get that card and you think, oh wow, that is that is going to make such a big difference. And I'll be happy if you then steamroll a couple of enemies for the next 1 or 2 levels, and then you might be set up to take on the boss there. But yeah, so it's basically a bit of so that we can control the pacing of the deck a bit, right? Because we give and also it's a bit of a learning tool as well, because the common cards that you get in the beginning are a bit simpler in terms of the systems that they use than the later cards. So that way you're a bit familiar with, this is how bounty works, and then later on in the game you might get a card that has a bit more of a complex chain of things that can happen with that. But at that point you should already have realized how the effects work, basically.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. A few questions from chat. A Pony wanted to know, what are the unit attack types? Melee, range, air, ground, that kind of thing. Yeah.
So definitely melee. We have a bunch of them already arranged as the main thing as well. Air, I mentioned before shortly, but it'll be difficult. I definitely want to find a way to make at least some air things work in some way. I think maybe the way that Command & Conquer did it back in the day where you basically build the hangar and then the planes just take off for a little while and then come back. That might be a bit less broken than if we actually have like controllable units, because that might just really break the game in some ways. Because then we would have to make sure that all the AI is basically set up to deal with air in ways that make sense. And yeah, I'm not sure. But apart from that, I think one thing that also sets us apart is that the skills are really crazy that some units have, right? There's some that the robots, they drop these little cores where their information is stored in basically like their soul or something. And there are some units that can use, whenever they die, they drop those. And there's a bunch of skills that use those as a resource. So, for example, your healers can charge up their mana just by eating one of those cores. There's other units that can revive them as zombies. And then there's one of the legendary cards that can actually revive the original units back to life again with only a limited lifetime, but still. You can imagine that can turn some crazy can have some crazy effects to turn around the match there. Because I really like basically also all the factions, like the robos, their theme is basically they're very squishy. You should build tons of them. They should die all the time, and you should kind of use their death as a resource. If you use their death as a resource, then you're playing it right. So at least in some of the builds, not all of them, of course. But yeah.
And as another question about the car design, I think one thing I think we all need to know: do you have any super weapons in this game? Can we eventually build like the Death Laser or the GDI Death Laser, or drop a nuke on the enemy?
100%, yeah. There's already some of them in the game that are kind of fun. I don't have the very late game ones made yet. But yeah, I think that just makes a ton of sense, right? Because especially with the type of game that we're making, it makes a ton of sense to have these types of buildings that basically enable you to do those kinds of things that then hook back into the deck aspect again, right? We have one super weapon that right now that kills all of your units in a giant radius and revives them back at base to full health. So that way you can basically leave a bunch of cores where, when you're fighting a battle, you leave a bunch of cores there, then you have all units back at base, and then you move out again, and then you can use all those cores near the battlefield to basically give an advantage there. It's these kinds of things. But yeah, I definitely, there will be some type of nuke, there will be lasers and all that kind of stuff.
All right.
And definitely fire strike, because I'm really happy with our spreading fire system. I'm a bit of a pyromaniac, I think, and it's just I enjoy it so much when I see all the forests burning away, and I have a tons of idea how you can actually kind of try to manage that chaos that comes out of that into to your advantage. Yeah. We have various fire bat similar units.
Let's see. Silver asked, how many rarities do you have planned for the game?
So right now we have 3 rarities. I'm fairly happy with that. Maybe we'll add one more like crazy last tier thing where there will only be a few of them, but I'm not sure yet. I think the 3 works really well in terms of, like I said, the goal of the rarity is, since we're not like selling card packs or something, the goal is just to control the pacing a bit of the run in the deck.
All right. That was Moon asked, what of the world this game takes place? Do you have anything in terms of lore or setting yet?
Yeah, so we basically have a giant backstory, and everything in the game actually kind of makes sense in that world even. And it's not mentioned in the game at all yet. Like there's literally not a single hint, except if I kind of maybe tell you, then you would maybe notice. That is one of the things that we actually planned a bunch of time to do, because we don't want to have a story campaign. We don't really want to have a story, but we want the world to feel like it kind of makes sense in a way, because there is a backstory, there is kind of a theme that we have in mind with it, and we want you to be able to feel that when you play the game. We kind of, I don't know, I hope that we can build it in a way where every time you play the game, maybe you find a little puzzle piece here, a little puzzle piece here that makes the world make a bit more sense over time. And then maybe if you play it long enough, then maybe you know what, or if you, of course, also I think the bosses can kind of hook into that, that we can do some things there that kind of maybe give you a hint on why they're so powerful, whether they're using some kind of technique that points to a certain thing that's happening in the world.
All right. And let's see. And the next question. One second while my phone is ringing up, but while it's being answered, does terrain or fog of war affect gameplay in any way?
Yeah, so fog of war affects it a lot. Like there's primary and secondary fog of war, and you have to scout, you have to see, to interact basically. So although that's not 100% true yet, but we will fix those instances where it isn't yet. So basically, for example, if you have that super weapon, then you need to figure out a way to get sight of the target so that you can actually use it. That way the sight and the fog of war definitely plays a role. The terrain kind of plays a role, mostly in terms of like there's low ground and high ground, and sometimes it's better because just of the pathing to have a certain space, but there's no like high ground advantage yet. It would be really easy to implement, and that is one of the things that we're gonna also experiment with. I'm not sure. I think a slight range advantage might make sense, and kind of fit in there, and then, or we just do something where it's very much hooking back into the deck aspect. That could also be something, right? If there might be certain snipers that if you put them on high ground, they get like a huge sight advantage and range advantage, but they're really vulnerable on the low ground. That kind of stuff. That could be cool. I need to be very sure that I can that we don't have too many maps that are generated in a way where that feels very broken. Like you have this great idea for that build, and then you try to go for it, and then there's no high ground that you can reach or something. That could be very frustrating. So those two things need to kind of come together there. But yeah, I would definitely want to experiment with it. It doesn't really play a role yet.
Okay. That was all the questions for right now. I'm sure we'll get a few more as time goes on. One thing that I wanted to kind of go back to for a second, with regards to the actual UI and commanding units, there's something that I was reading a few comments on the forums about, and something that I was experienced with the game. In terms of like your overall ability to command what you're able to do, this is something I think is very challenging for a lot of RTS games. We've seen some that can be set up for like on-map productions, like your Supreme Commanders, Planetary Annihilations. Some that are far more micro-intensive, Starcraft, Command & Conquers, of course, Dawn of War, and so on. With like your approach with Rogue Command, I guess, where are you kind of settling in terms of, I guess, like micromanagement and the UI of the game?
Yeah, so it's it's very, very much RTS in the vein of StarCraft and Command and Conquer in that sense, right? You have you need to exert direct control. You need to give orders to build stuff. There's no auto building. You can queue stuff, of course, and cancel queues. And we have a pretty smart system that if you actually, I don't know, maybe the should mention the hotkey setup that we have, because I think it works really well. We basically, if you press tab, that selects all your buildings. And then you can just QWER, then triggers the factories in that order, right? So that way, it's really, really quick to rebuild stuff. And you can also set the rally points of all those when you press tab. So I think that is a really nice setup to kind of control the macro aspect. And also you can just press spacebar at any time and slow the game down to 10%, which also gives you a lot of like breathing room when there's a very stressful situation going on and you need to maybe figure out something on the minimap or something. But it's very much a classic. You need to do all the stuff yourself. Mm-hmm. There might be some units that maybe might help you with building stuff, maybe. Stuff like that. I think that, again, that could also work where we could automate certain aspects as kind of an aspect of certain decks. And then those could be maybe more beginner friendly versus people that don't need to rely on that, don't need to use that. But I'm not sure yet. I have to try that out. I have an idea for some, basically like a base assistant unit that you can set up near factories and tell it to re-trigger it when it's done building and you have enough money or stuff like that.
Okay. And another point I wanted to ask about in terms of the unit design or general design of the game, with regards to the actual structures you're able to build, you mentioned, of course, there's towers, you have unit producers, that kind of thing. Do you have any defensive structures or just structures in general that are kind of like, I would say, like, unique? And I guess as an example, in like a game like Supreme Commander, you could build like a artillery defense shield tower. So tower goes up, creates a shield around your base, and your artillery is just immediately countered by it. And it was kind of like a unique thing for that game.
Yeah. So there is a couple of things that I think are fairly unique in terms of structures, like I mentioned the building before that kind of makes fire spread more quickly, that has like this giant global effect. We need to be a bit careful, like an artillery shield that could be kind of break the balance, because but if it would be an active skill that would only be active for like 10 seconds and you can use it when the enemy is attacking you to survive a wave or something, that's definitely something that could work. Like we have, for example, we have buildings that we have shields similar to the proto shields in StarCraft. That some units have, and there's a building that you can give kind of temporary shields to a glob of units there, or to a glob of turrets and buildings, so that way you can influence a fight there, and also that way you can make these units hook into your shield deck even if they normally don't have shield, right? So if you have like an effect that maybe units with shield do more damage or whatever, or trigger a certain effect when the shield gets depleted, then suddenly all those units that usually don't have shields also hook into that system.
Yeah. Nice. And that's kind of like the fun. I think goes back to what we were saying earlier about having like those potentially overpowered strategies with the cards and the options, that you can really kind of see that steamroll effect when you get that one card that then helps you with another card that helps you with another card, and suddenly everything just kind of blows up for you.
Yeah. So I'm happy to run into that, right, in a certain way, because I think because the game has these two aspects, the core gameplay loop of playing an RTS and the deck building loop, I think it's fine to basically reward you if you're great at either of those. So if you figure out a really great deck, but you're not a super great RTS player, I still want you to be able to succeed, at least for like the first couple levels of difficulty. And I think that's where this Ascension system again could fit in really nicely, because if you're good at both of those aspects, you will progress pretty quickly and hit the harder difficulty levels there. yeah, we'll have to see. That is definitely because of course, like the skill gap between beginners and pros in RTS is gigantic compared to many different other games. So I'm thinking about how we can maybe like if we can see that a player plays really well, maybe get them through the progression a bit faster or something. That might be something that works, because I definitely don't want people to get too bored because it feels too easy for them. But I wanna err on the side of easy and err on the side of having people being able to steamroll, because I think in the end that's more fun. Especially like near the end of a run, like if you figured out something cool, I don't want you to be able to suffer. But also, of course, it does have to feel difficult, because otherwise it wouldn't feel rewarding. So yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to solve. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really confident that that this ascension system at least will kind of alleviate some aspects of that, where because you can just basically go to the level, like you can progress to the point where you start to get really challenged, and you learned a lot of stuff along the way, and that might help you get better there.
Yeah, and you're definitely not talking to an MLG Starcraft player right here. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm that neither. So I definitely that's also why the time slow is in the game, right? I'm not the youngest anymore. I don't have 300 actions per minute. And I want to still be able to enjoy the game. That is also, I think, I feel like a lot of RTS games, and that has actually kind of alleviated already in the past couple years. But for like a decade, it felt like everybody just wanted to make the next big esports game, and everybody just tried to push that competitive aspect as hard as they could, and like have that crazy tight balance. And I think the single player fun, which I think a lot of the people at the high point of when RTS was popular, for a lot of people, that's the reason why they enjoyed it. Like I know a lot of people that played just a lot of skirmish matches in Starcraft after school, and a lot of, or maybe like with their multiplayer with their friends and stuff like that, or really enjoyed the campaigns and never really got into the multiplayer aspect. So,
yep. Let's see. A few more questions. Those Moon asked, although StarCraft 2 was popular, after dust was settled, may consider StarCraft 1 a more in-depth mechanics. Is there anything you want to draw on from older RTSs with Rogue Command?
Yeah, mainly stupid harvesters. No, I mean that's kind of that is where how the game was born, right? Where it was a bit of a nostalgic feeling for StarCraft, and when I say StarCraft, I mean StarCraft 1 and Command and Conquer, like the Red Alert 1 and 2 and the original Command and Conquers. That those were the games that basically get us hooked into the genre. And that is kind of the Highlander point you just said. It has stupid hovers. That should be a box bullet point. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Yeah. So I think I kind of, I used to get up at like 3 at night to watch GOM TV streams of Artosis and Tasteless commentate like Korean pro matches. So I really liked that pro esports aspect as well. But I'm not that. And I definitely I really like the doing a revert drop in StarCraft 1 and that kind of thing. I think that what I'm trying to say is I think sometimes having not every edge smoothed off in terms of like pathing and these kinds of things could actually enhance the fun of the game, because you have to take care a bit of the things, and I want you to be able to do that by, for example, slowing down time. But I think it's a really cool learning curve that this enables, right? If the first time you encounter our suicide bomber enemy, people are really overwhelmed, and then they figure out if they just send out a couple of units in front, it's way easier to deal with, because the splash damage just gets absorbed by a couple of units instead of your whole army. And then suddenly you have that knowledge, and you can use that every time you encounter an AoE effect in the game, that you can just realize, damn it, I just need to split up my army a bit more, or I need to disable this one thing that does this AoE effect to me. And I really I think that's a really cool way to kind of teach people through frustration a bit, and then they have that knowledge for the rest of the game, and then we can push the difficulty harder and do crazier things there.
see. That one. With regards to the difficulty levels, Silver wanted to know how many like ascension levels are you planning for the game?
I honestly don't know yet. We have to see. We have to. We have a bare bone system for that in place already, but that is not really tested yet. And we have to see how the community deals with it. Basically, if I think Silver, who asked the question, I think if he keeps playing our game, we need to add a lot of difficulty levels because he's very good at it. But I think basically what we try to do is figure out a system that is very scalable, and then try to maybe add some crazy variations in the end, where you basically have to be very, very good at all aspects of the game to be able to progress through it, and maybe do like some crazy special tactics to be able to resist the AI there. But yeah, I think I'm probably never going to be able to reach those levels, right? Because even though I design a game, I'm just not a very good RTS player. And yeah, I think that's fine. I want bad players like me to also have a lot of fun with the game.
And from Pony's question about the game being a roguelite, is it possible in the first run, or I guess how do like unlocks and progression work over the course of playing?
So I think we're just gonna stay a roguelike, and we're not gonna do any roguelite elements. I might eat my words on that later, but that's where I'm at right now, because I think because of exactly what I talked about before, right? We have so many different parts of the game that you can get better in. You can get better in the economy. You can get better in the deck building, better in micro, in reproducing units, setting rally points. Like there's so many minutia to RTS gameplay that you can. I think I saw that in playtest, right? I don't like. I'm not putting that out of thin air, or I saw people that have basically never played an RTS before. Kind of really struggle with the first two levels, and then get really beaten down in the third level, and then they start again, and immediately the first level is no problem. The second level, oh, okay, if I do that, then it's okay. I can kind of deal with that, and then they figure out a way to deal with the third level, and and then you can see how this, and then also at the same time they understand the deck building better. So, oh, if I take this here, that actually enhances that aspect, and I think, since there's so many levers that the player can pull to kind of get advantages, I think that we don't need to add another level of progression, because there's so much there already that you can get better at. And also, I don't know. I think I really like those roguelite progression systems in some games. Like, I don't know, I think Hades did it really well, and there's other games that do them really, really well, and they're fun. But and also one thing that why I might go back on my word there is, I think they're also very motivating, and I think that having that meta layer of stuff to kind of encourage you to maybe try, like Hades does, I think this really great thing where they encourage you to try different weapons, right? Because you get more. There's always one weapon that gives you a higher reward for your for that one meta currency, basically, and I think that kind of stuff can be really cool and really motivating to kind of keep going back to the game and try to figure out different things about it. So yeah, I don't know. What we're definitely going to do is just give you a limited set of cards in the beginning, and also give you not all the factions at the beginning. We'll have to unlock those by playing, but that's not. They're not worse, right? The things that you have in the beginning, if you're playing the big game really well, you'll be able to win the first run. Absolutely. My cat just scared the crap out of me. She just jumped against the window from the outside. What are you doing? Yes, I'm just gonna let her in for a second. Sorry.
All right,
otherwise, she'd just be scratching on the window. What are you doing? Sorry, I lost my point.
You were talking about like having the roguelite with the unlocks and things like that.
Oh yeah, right. But I don't remember what the point I was getting at. So, oh yeah, sorry, the unlocks, right? So I think that is a really important thing, because again, with the game being pretty, like the RTS gameplay being complicated and the deck building also being something where you can learn a lot, I think it's a good idea to maybe leave the harder to understand systems and harder to understand cards out of the beginner sets, and then you unlock those as you progress into the game, and then maybe then hopefully you're kind of better set up to actually understand why those are in the game and what they do and how they interact with the other systems in there. So yeah, that's the approach that I have in mind for that. So it's not gonna, but it's definitely, you will be able to destroy the game in your first runs, and you'll probably be able to win the Ascensions with the base level stuff. Probably.
Right. And with the Ascensions, I guess, what modifiers, this is a pony's question, like, what modifiers will it at least be like as you go up them?
Yeah. So that is very much still an open question. I think, like, there's, of course, what you can do is just make them stronger, just make all the baseline stuff have more HP, do more damage, that kind of stuff. And I think that will definitely be an aspect of that. But again, I think the more interesting part would be to mess with the player in more interesting ways, like making, for example, like have modifiers on the maps where there's an increased likelihood of like sandstorms or I don't know, volcano eruptions or stuff like that, where you have to deal with certain things that might kind of mess with your rhythm in your base building, that kind of stuff. But I think there's a certain limit to how much you can do of that very interesting qualitative stuff. I think we will have to do some just qualitative stuff where you just make stuff stronger. I don't know, maybe like every fourth or fifth thing adds a system, and the other ones are just qualitative increases. I'm not sure yet. I want to definitely also have enemy units that you will only encounter in the harder difficulty levels and make them a lot meaner and a lot crazier. Yeah, we'll see. We have a lot of ideas, but we're only two people, so it's yeah. What I said before with not doing feature creep, some of the things I said here definitely counteract that a bit. But yeah, I think. But again, it's also still, it's like it's all in that frame, right? It's all this idea of having a real deck builder in a way, or that logic of how you build a deck is actually really in the game. It's not a deck of cards though. So, but yeah, it's really, maybe, I don't know, just making, I think, I don't know if there's a good word for that, because I think there's like these build games, right? Like Risk of Rain is also one of those, or 20 Minutes to Dawn, Vampire Survivors. It's these games where you try to figure out you have that run, or a lot of roguelikes anyway are so like that. So I don't know. I think maybe that is a better way to describe it, as just doing a build instead of the deck building. But I think the presentation as cards is really beneficial, because people are very used to process the information that we're trying to convey in that way, right? Because, if I can read the text here, I have those classes, I have the cost up here, and I think that works really well.
Mm-hmm. I think the one challenge when you do like the Ascension modes again is like, how much does the baseline of the game get affected by it? Like, if you add too many stats, all of a sudden, like, your opening hand can be just decimated. The enemy is just, 5 times more damage, or it takes 10 times more hits. You gotta be really careful how you balance those things, especially again in a real-time strategy game.
Yeah, definitely. I think my intuition, and that is not proven yet, but that is, I think that we can probably go really crazy, because there's so many different things that you can do, and some players already figured out so many minute details about how you can do certain things in the game that are way stronger than actually intended and thought. And I actually like that. I don't think that's whenever I see something like that, I don't feel like, oh, I messed up the balance. I think, oh, that's cool. There's even more interactions than I thought. I really love that aspect of the game, right?
All right. As a quick time check, we are just about an hour and 10 into the cast.
Yeah, second cat also came in.
I figure maybe another like 15 to 20 minutes of that works for you.
I'm good. Yep. We we can go as your voice still holds up.
All right. And for chat, I figure maybe let's do multitasking those cats. Yes.
Yeah, if it was day, there would also be 2 kids. That's my home office setup here. 2 cats, 2 kids.
I say maybe another like 15-20 minutes, and I think for chat, we'll probably do like last call for questions in like the next minute or so in terms of getting set up. I do want to give you some time to talk about the AI. I think we've been kind of like working our way to it. I don't think there's anything else. Let's see. That was going to ask any great moments that stand out to you playing like the amazing RTSs back in the day.
Oh, that's a really good question. Not sure. I don't have like a specific. I have one, but that was really mean of me. I have one where I betrayed a friend, and where we said we would play together against the AI, and then I betrayed him and overrun his space. That is definitely the most memorable moment because he was very angry. But I don't know. I really, really loved just setting up lines of siege tanks and having Zerglings run into that. That is definitely a super, super, super. Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. After that, I felt really bad about it. In the moment, I thought it was I thought it was funny, and then afterwards, I realized that was really not cool. I was, I think, 14 at the time. But yeah, I think like I really, really like those moments. I don't know. I think They Are Billions also does this really well, right? It's this moment of there's like this giant ball of enemies coming to get you, and you try to figure out a way how you can resist that. And then this moment of kind of catharsis when you finally have a death wall that's bigger than theirs, and you can crunch their base and take them apart bit by bit. I really like that. And yeah, I used to be like a horribly bad RTS player because I played StarCraft before we didn't have internet, so I had no idea what I was doing. There was no builds. I just tried to build as many cannons as I could, then scale up to carriers, and then just have my carriers diminish the enemies. That was my go-to strat.
All right. Let's see. Pony asks, "What's your favorite RTS or top 5?"
I think my favorite is definitely StarCraft 1. That's definitely one that I've played the most by far. I also really like StarCraft 2, although I agree that it might actually feel a bit too smooth in some aspects. And I also really like the Command Conquer games. One game that is, I don't think that well known in the US, but I really, really love is Stronghold and Stronghold Crusaders. They are kind of like a city builder / RTS games where you it's very much like the Anno games. In the one part, you have to build up your castle and defend it against the enemies. I really love those games a lot. And let me think. Yeah, I don't know, but I think like the main thing for me is definitely StarCraft. Like that is like when that came out, I was really, really so into that. And when then the Brute War expansion came out, I love those games a lot.
And I play Stronghold too, and I enjoy that one. Just have not like any of the ones after Crusaders. Like they just haven't really.
They have not figured out how to make a good game after that, and it hurts every time they announce a new one. And you can already tell by the screenshots. No. They still don't understand why those games were fun. But I'll never like. Maybe that is also one of the moments. Is the moment when one of the arrows hits an enemy in Stronghold. I think that sound just will forever be stuck in my head.
And Silver asks, what roguelike have you played the most?
That's a good question. I'm actually not 100% sure because I played a lot of them. Especially, of course, in the last years to figure out a bunch of stuff to get inspired. I think probably. Oh no, actually, it's probably Monster Train, yeah. Because it used to be Slay the Spire for a long time, but I played Monster Train. I have more hours on Steam here, and then I also played it on Xbox for a really long time in the evenings, sitting on my stationary bike and playing Monster Train. That did for a long time.
All right. So I think with that, we've been dancing around the topic of the AI design of Rogue Command. I think this will be a good time to, I think it'll be a good point to either start to wrap up with or kind of go into the next few minutes, because AI design in these kinds of games is also very challenging, because you can either go super duper, min-max AI that, it does every command perfectly and knows exactly, you've composed your base is like this in circle, but there's that one little crack and it knows it, so it perfectly sends those units. You have stuff like Supreme Commander or Supreme Commander 2 when it got the AI update, when the AI just knows or it figures out, oh, you didn't build any anti-nuke defenses. Okay, here's 15 nukes coming down on your base. And then we have games where the AI is designed to be almost like non-existent. That, it will send 5 units, every 20 minutes. And it just feels
right now.
and it just feels like you're not even really going up against something. So with what you're planning for Rogue Command, I guess, how are you figuring out, or where do you want the AI to go with this game?
Yeah, so like you mentioned the like when we talked about the rock paper scissors aspect, we talked about the game being a bit more like the setup being a bit more generalist, and I think that also goes for the AI in a certain way, because again, I think to me it's very clear that the role of the AI in our game is very clear. It has to give resistance. It has to do interesting things, challenge you in interesting ways. But I also want it to be pretty dumb, because I want you to be smart. Like, I want you to figure out their weaknesses. I want you to figure out, hey, this type of enemy does this, and if I have this deck and do this thing, then I can counter it. And if that means that some of the levels, because it's run-based, so if there's some of the levels that are super easy because you figured out a neat trick to counter an enemy that has a certain setup, that's totally fine for me, because I think it's fine if you have a run and there's like dips in difficulty, and that can kind of give you some breathing room before then maybe the next enemy that you hit kind of has a setup that is a bit more of a counter to what the build that you're going for. And so I think there again, it's what I'm trying to do is make them feel specific. Like they are supposed to do certain things. And what I want to try, I don't think we've mentioned that yet, really, is I want to go even harder in that direction, in the way that certain units will actually have certain behaviors associated to them. So if you encounter this enemy unit, their thing will always be they try to kill your harvesters. So whenever you see that unit, you have to prepare for that. Or this tank will always try to do X, or there will be this build, this type of AI that will try to occupy all the crystal fields on the map and hamper your economy that way, or these kinds of things, or I don't know, maybe another AI just goes around and burns down all the trees, and you have a build that relies heavily on having trees around, and then and then you're screwed. So yeah, I really, really like that idea, because that way it's again another angle of learning, right? It's another learning curve that you can get. If you know those units, then it still might be tricky, because you still have to do the micro to do the right things. But there might be certain situations where you kind of have them figured out, and then you can feel smart and you can feel happy with your deck. So yeah, I think that's our approach. I definitely don't think, like, since there's no one thing that is very, very different for Rogue Command to other games is the not having a tech tree in the level, right? That makes a huge difference, because that means that there is not this back and forth between, they go for this build, so I have to now switch my build to this. No, it's the builds, they happen between the levels. The build happens in one run. So that also means that we have to kind of not go too crazy into, like, that's a problem with air units, right? We cannot, if we do an enemy that only, like, that has a bunch of air units and you have nothing that counters air, that's just not fun, I think. And that's just, and I don't have not come up with a way to actually make that make that make sense in the game, basically. Except you could make everything attack air, but then why have it in the first place, right? Then it could just be, I don't know, boats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Yeah.
again, like how advanced you make the AI, like again, it goes with the cards and the design as well. Like you give, and as we were saying earlier, with the different hexes and kind of boss battles, if you make the AI really good, and you also give them like some crazy advantage, it's just going to steamroll over the player no matter what.
Yeah. That's why I think it's like I want them to be have strong stuff, but I never want them I want them to do sneaky stuff sometimes, but I want you to be able to figure that out and then use it to your advantage. Like, is there a yeah, we'll add all that stuff. Just somebody said there's no mute and borderless window mode yet. Sorry, that distracted me from my train of thought there. What was I saying?
About balancing the AI would be like the special abilities and like boss fights and hexes.
Yeah. So I don't know. So basically, I think we just I want to I want to have. I don't want the AI to be smart. Like, I want them to do surprising stuff, but I want you to be able to figure that out and then use it against them. So, for example, if you know that there's an AI that will try to occupy all the crystal fields, then maybe if you could send out a set up minefields around those so that they will run into your minefield. So that way, you can kind of try to figure out how the AI works, and then try to come up with a way that your build can tackle that problem. And I think that's really interesting because there's already that's because RTSs were very complicated and there's lots of different things going on at the same time. There's always like a ton of different ways that you could do something, right? So that you could come up with a solution to a certain problem. Like, you could just be really good at micro, and then you barely have to build any units in some cases because you can just outmaneuver the enemy, or you can just 1A all the time, or send your rally points into the enemy base. If your economy is that strong, then that is also fine. And I think that is also I really like that. Like, sometimes I there's a build where I'm tired and I just want to have a build where I can just send out tons and tons and tons of units and have them die all the time, and then that's fine. And sometimes I try to do something that is a bit more tricky, where I need to use the active skills at the right time. And that kind of stuff, yeah.
All right. Oh, there's my voice starting to go. I think I am just about out of questions. I guess let's talk a little bit more about kind of like what you're hoping for in terms of scheduling and developing the game. So right now, let me just double check the page. So right now the game is not out. You have the demo available. Now you are planning on going into early access. Do you have any estimated date for that for the people watching?
We're saying early-ish 2023 for early access. It's, you never really know, but I think the things that we've planned out for it are pretty reasonable to be able to actually achieve them in that time frame. We want to launch with 2 factions, and then basically, we want to have all the technical foundations of the game be really solid. I think we're already in a pretty good space, actually. There's not a ton of crazy bugs and stuff like that. And then we want to use early access for balancing, polishing, and also adding a ton of more contents, adding the other factions, that kind of stuff. And
All right.
And also, I think the demo will also be continually updated until early access, because I think that's really important for us, because this is our first PC game, and we initially wanted to take the demo down again after the Steam Next Fest, but then watching people play the game was so incredibly valuable for us, because it's just crazy. You see so many little things where this aspect here wasn't really clear or something, and so that's why we call the demo lab now, because there will tons of things will change in there, and because we're kind of using it like a early access, so we can figure stuff out.
Excuse me. And one other question, I just want to clarify this point for people watching. With the car design, are there any randomized elements to how the unit cards are placed? Or, like, do stats change? Or is everything essentially, like, hard coded or, set? So, like, this common card, let's say, is a soldier, and you get another common card that's a soldier. They're both the same exact stats.
So all the units are very different. Like, and the upgrades actually they change them in crazy ways as well. So there's things that change the stats. There's things that change the some systems aspects of them. But yeah, sorry, I'm not sure if I actually did I answer your question.
I guess what I meant was, like, when you get cards, are the stats randomly shuffled or changed?
Yeah. Sorry. No. They're always the same. I think that makes more sense in our case. Because there is so much randomness in there already with what you will get, right? Because I think it's almost impossible that you will ever get the exact same build in the game. So that way, if you get this unit, then there's these kinds of upgrades that I could maybe get, and that could help me for this unit, or these kinds of hacks that I can get that hook into that system that this unit has to aid, later improve it, or whatever. So I think having these random stats doesn't really make sense for us. We'll have to see. Maybe something like that might make sense for the Ascensions as well. I've thought about adding more randomness to that, or do you know the Snecko mechanic in Slay the Spire, where it just jumbles all your card costs? Something like that could also be effects in the game that kind of mess with the meta structure, right? Like there might be something that kind of, I don't know if that would even be possible, but you could kind of reverse the health curve of your units, where the one with most health, it gets reversed or something. I don't know. That doesn't really make sense, but it's that we could do stuff that kind of messes with these kind of stats on the meta level. But yeah, I think that's some stuff that will probably happen later on, because I want to have the main package be really tight, and then we can break it again.
And I can tell you, I am very familiar with that, and I hate that perk, especially when the enemy throws it on you, because I always take low-cost cards, and that just wrecks my build every single time.
Yeah.
Pony wanted to ask, where's the best place to leave feedback for the game if he does decide to play it?
Oh yeah, definitely. Basically, the best place is definitely our Discord. I'm very, very active on there. I try to answer every question that pops up there, and we try to be very, very open with our development as well. So the Discord is also linked in the demo and on our Steam page. You can basically find it everywhere. That's definitely the best place. We also post kind of semi-regularly on Twitter, but definitely the best place to interact with us is the Discord.
All right. Anything else regarding the game's design or development that we didn't touch on that you'd like to bring up now before we begin to wrap things up?
I mean, we touched on a lot of things, so there's definitely something, but I don't really like it. I don't feel like there was like a glaring omission or something.
Right. So I think with that, I am just about out of questions. If anyone has any super last minute questions for Mario, feel free to post them now. Otherwise, I think we'll wrap things up. And it has been a great conversation. I haven't had too many like RTS talks lately, so it's great to have one. We're doing like a strategy game design roundtable cast, so we've been talking more about like high level, but learn more about like unit design and that kind of thing. It's always fun.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think like when I listen to strategy design discussions, then I realize sometimes that we're actually in that sense kind of more of a roguelike than a strategy game, because having that that tech tree aspect where you have to adjust your build to certain things, and you have that rock paper scissors aspect within the core gameplay, is very, very core to a lot of those games, right? Because you have to figure out, okay, oh, he's building tanks, so I have to build this, and that is I think, something that really sets us apart. And I think that is something that also, because someone asked before if we plan to do things that make it more approachable for newcomers. I think that is actually kind of an inherent quality of the game that makes it more approachable, because it's a bit similar to a campaign in that way, right? Because you get doled out the units bit by bit, and then you can learn how they work, and you don't have to react within one run where you suddenly the enemy switches up his build and you have to do something completely different. You can kind of focus on getting your deck, you're getting your run right, and try to make it as cool and fun as possible for you, and push it in a certain direction. And yeah, I think that is a bit different than like the usual strategy game AI design and counter design.
Yeah. And having, again, like the roguelike elements in what is typically not a genre built on randomization of skills, units, that kind of thing, is a very interesting way of trying to add more replayability to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I think that's kind of the main point why I was willing to give up building the virtual reality synthesizer, because Martin kind of made it make sense for me that this is actually why it's such a cool idea and such a cool approach, because it's super fun to just play the game again and then figure out some specific thing that you can do with a certain deck, and then you get beat down, and then you encounter that one card in the run, and then if I build my deck this way, then maybe later I get this card, and then you can try to there's tons of stuff to learn and to discover, and I really, really enjoy that aspect, even playing myself. So yeah, that's also I mentioned that moment where I see someone do something that I didn't anticipate, like combining certain things, and that also still happens to me sometimes. I play the game and suddenly I realize, oh wait, if I have this and also this, then this means that this happens. And these are just moments where I'm smiling, because I think that's just the system-based approach of the deck building just paying off in interesting ways.
All right. I don't think there's anything else last minute. We talked about the design, we talked about the roguelike. I think I'm good. Like I said at the start, I did play the demo. This will be probably 2 festivals ago, so as you said, a lot has changed. And I guess with regards to the demo, are you planning any big updates to it between like now and early access?
Absolutely, yeah. So one thing that's coming fairly soon is we're gonna do localization for a whole bunch of languages. I think it's gonna be 11 in total, I think, or 10. And then we're just gonna keep adding new stuff to the demo as well. The demo will basically, every time we do something for the main game, except some content, it will also benefit the demo. It will be like technologically it will be the same, because that way we can use the demo to basically improve our core technology and fix bugs and stuff like that. And that's definitely something that we want to do. And also we will probably rotate content in and out a bit of the demo. So it might be worth to check back in sometimes, because we might want to test out some subset of a certain deck, and then kind of narrow down or give some more cards of that direction out in the demo, and then later take them out and give something else, so that we can kind of use it as a learning tool for ourselves. And it has the nice effect that the people playing the demo can also like see new stuff, because it's basically like if you played Slay the Spire, we'll probably have something like the stage system there. The demo is fairly close to what the first stage will probably be in Slay the Spire. So the later game things you will only encounter in the full game, but yeah, there's a lot of variety in the demos already.
All right. And I think with that should do it. For World Command for yourself, do you have anything social media-wise you would like to plug? Twitter, Facebook, whatever?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, definitely the best place to get in touch is our Discord. But we read everything that we get in terms of feedback. So if you post in the Steam forums, that's also fine. We're on Twitter as well at rogue_command is our account, and we're on there as well. We post some screenshots and GIFs on there. I did some TikToks as well. If you want to see my face in jump cuts and some nice fire montages, then that's where you should go. But yeah, those are definitely the like I said, I think the most important hub for us is definitely the Discord, and it's been really cool to see actually like a small community forming there already of people really getting really into the game and having like really cool ideas, really cool discussions about certain aspects, and also super valuable bug reports.
Mm-hmm. All right, and for people watching this recorded, I'll include those in the show notes down below. So, with that said, we're going to wrap things up for the show this week. Mario, again, thank you so much for coming on, and best of luck with getting a Rogue Command into early access.
Thank you so much. Don't forget to wishlist the game, please, if you're interested at all. It really, really helps.
Mm-hmm. All right, so for the people watching this live or recorded, thank you so much for tuning in. Do the liking, subscribing, and commenting. You'll find links to my stuff down below and up there on the overlay. Be sure to join our Discord and check out the Patreon as well. Again, if you are a developer working on any release or upcoming game, or just want to talk game design with me, I'm always looking for guests. So please feel free to reach out. Come back for daily sessions on game design here and on game wisdom, where he's in the art and science of games. And until our next discussion, have a great night. Take care, everybody.
Bye.